Good morning, everyone. Now, today we will talk about some theories that is required for business ethics. Okay, so first is normative theories. A normative theory to business ethics examines what ought to occur in ethical decision making. The word normative is equivalent to an ideal standard. Normative मतलब कुछ standard ideal standard आपको दिए जाते हैं that you should do or you should not. Okay, so, normative theories were first proposed by Fred Shepard, Theodore Peterson, and Wilbur Sherman in their book called Four Theories of the Press. A normative theory in business ethics revolves around the standards of behavior within the firm as well as within the industry. These normative rules and standards are based on individual moral values as well as the collective values of the organization. The normative approach for business ethics is concerned with general ethical values implemented into business. Concepts like fairness and justice are highly important in a normative structure. Strong normative structures in organizations are positively related to ethical decision making. Normative approach is the inquiry which includes to identify the values that should guide individuals and groups. It aims to justify the normally desirable norms or standards that supposed to guide individuals or groups. The normative questionnaires include what ought to be and what is good. Basically, these are the theories, or we can say these are the basic standards that we should follow. Okay, जैसे कुछ examples हैं normative questions के जैसे how far does the obligation of engineers to protect public safety extend in given situations? When should engineer highlight on dangerous practices of the employers for whom they work? Whose value is supposed to be primary in making judgments about acceptable risk in designing a public transport system? Which particular laws and organizational procedures affecting engineering practice are normally warranted? What moral rights should engineers have in order to fulfill their professional obligations? What are the reasons engineers have obligation to their employers, clients, and society? So these are the examples of some normative questions. ओके कि किस तरीके से कोई चीज आप जैसे डिजाइन करते हो कोई इंजीनियरिंग मॉडल डिजाइन करते हो तो उसमें किस तरीके से क्या उसके स्टैंडर्ड्स होने चाहिए क्या चीज आपको फॉलो करनी चाहिए किन चीजों का आपको ध्यान रखना चाहिए ओके इसी तरीके से एथिकल थ्योरीज इन रिलेशन टू बिजनेस इसमें दो पढ़ते हैं हम चीजें एक होता है इगोइज्म ईगो वर्ड से आपको पता चलता होगा इगोइज्म इज रिलेटेड टू द सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट ओके ethical egoism is a normative theory. It defines right or acceptable actions as those that maximize a particular person's self-interest as they defined by the individual. Ethical egoism is the view that people ought to pursue their own self-interest and no one has any obligation to promote anyone else's interest. All major ethical theories have recognized the importance of self-interest. For example, utilitarians take into account one's own good as well as the good of others. Duty ethics take into account duties to ourselves. Right ethicists emphasize on our rights to pursue our own good. Virtue ethicist stresses on importance of self-respect, which implies looking after one's own needs. Also, all theories insist on balance of self-interest and moral responsibility to others. Ethical egoism challenges all these theories. Ethical, since it is theory about morality and egoism, because it says that it is the sole duty of each of us to maximize his own good. Ethical egoists would point that given their talents and situation, they adopted an overly narrow view of their own interest. Self-interest is what is good for oneself in long run. Ethical pluralism indicates that there may be alternative moral perspectives that are reasonable, but no one of which is accepted completely by all people. Ethical relativism is that view when the actions are morally right, when they are approved by law or custom, and are wrong when they violate law or customs. Depending on the egoist, self-interest may be construed as physical, well-being, power, pleasure, fame, a satisfying career, a good family life, wealth, or something else. Ethical egoism cannot be coherently equated with selfishness because it is often in one's self-interest to help others or to refrain from harming them. Ethical egoism is not a very popular moral philosophy. This is because it goes against certain basic assumptions that most people have regarding what ethics involves. Two objections seem especially powerful. Ethical egoism has no solutions to offer when a problem arises involving conflicts of interest. Many ethical issues are of this sort. For example, a company wants to empty waste into a river. The people living downstream object. Ethical egoism advises that both parties actively pursue what they want. It doesn't suggest any sort of resolution or common sense compromise. तो हमने ये देखा यहाँ पर कि egoism जो है वो बात करता है एथिकल इगोइज्म दैट टॉक अबाउट द सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट कि आप ऐसा काम करो जो आपके वेलफेयर में। आप इसको सेल्फिशनेस नहीं कह सकते हो, क्योंकि आप अगर खुद सही काम करोगे, इसको मोरली आप करेक्ट होंगे, तो आप दूसरों के साथ भी डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट वे में आप कह सकते हो कि दूसरों के साथ भी आप सही वे में ही काम करो। ओके, नेक्स्ट आता है हमारा साइकोलॉजिकल इगोइज्म। Psychological egoism is the theory that all our actions are basically motivated by self-interest. Psychological egoism is the view that everyone is always motivated to act in his or her perceived self-interest. देखो, जो देखा अभी हमने बिजनेस एथिकल इगोइज्म, उसमें हमने देखा है कि आप सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट में काम करो। साइकोलॉजिकल इगोइज्म ये कहता है कि वैसे भी आपको सोचने की जरूरत नहीं है, सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट में काम करो। आप जो भी करते हो आप सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट के लिए ही करते हो। अगर आप किसी की हेल्प भी करते हो तो साइकोलॉजिकल इफेक्ट ये है कि आदमी अगर कोई काम कर रहा है तो सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट के लिए ही कर रहा है। ठीक है, तो साइकोलॉजिकल egoism defines how we are as human beings. It is the prime idea that selfless acts do not exist. It is the belief that all people are selfish. For example, if you help an old lady cross the street and it makes you feel good, a psychological egoist will say that it is selfish because it made you feel good. कितनी सिंपल सी चीज है कि आपने इसकी हेल्प की, क्यों? आपको अच्छा फील हो रहा था, आपको खुद अच्छा फील कर रहे थे कि हाँ मैंने आज दिन में अच्छा काम किया, तो कहीं ना कहीं आपका एक सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट था वहां पर। ओके, according to a psychological egoist, humans are naturally selfish and we have no other option but to think of ourselves. Psychological egoism claims that when people choose to help others, it is because of the personal benefits they themselves obtain or expect to obtain from doing so. Psychological versus ethical egoism. So, whereas ethical egoism says that we ought to be selfish, psychological egoism says only that we are in fact selfish. एक हमने कहा एथिकल इगोइज्म जो कहता है कि वी शुड बी सेल्फिश, वी शुड वर्क फॉर द सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट, और साइकोलॉजिकल इगोइज्म क्या कर रहा है कि वी आर नो नीड टू बिकम सेल्फिश, वी आर सेल्फिश ऑलरेडी। Okay, so psychological egoists typically reply to this by pointing out that people only ever do what they desire to do. No one has ever done something that they did not want to do, and this proves that psychological egoism is correct. So what are the differences between ethical egoism and psychological egoism? Ethical जो बात करता है, it emphasizes the fact that people should act for their self-interest. Psychological बात emphasize करता है the fact that people act primarily out of self-interest. कि कोई भी काम करते हैं तो self-interest से ही करते हैं. Ethical जो है, it is a normative theory, and psychological is a descriptive theory. Ethical only claims that we should or seek our self-interest, even though all persons might not do so. Psychological egoism makes no claim as to how one should act, क्योंकि already वो act उसी way में करते हैं. Ethical recommends how human behavior or action should be, और साइकोलॉजिकल डिस्क्राइब्स रीजन फॉर ह्यूमन बिहेवियर एंड एक्शन। वो रीजन बताता है कि क्यों अगर किसी ने काम किया है तो क्या उसका सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट है, वो रीजन बता रहा है कि दिस इज बिकॉज ऑफ द सेल्फिशनेस, दिस इज बिकॉज ऑफ द सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट। ओके, सो थैंक यू एवरीवन।